Summary History of Rhema Chapel International Churches, Lekki. Formerly known as Rhema Chapel International Churches, Victoria Island, celebrating 30 years of God's faithfulness, 30 years of impact, 30 years of absolute dependency on God. Rhema Chapel International Churches is the church arm of the ever-increasing Word Ministries, whose founder and president is Reverend George Olawale Adegboye, and whose co-founder is Reverend Mrs. Oloruntoyin Modupeola Adegboye. In March 1995, a Victoria Island installation was inaugurated by Reverend Sam Adeyemi, who was then the minister in charge of Rhema Chapel International Churches, YABA, the national headquarters of the ever-increasing Word Ministries. The new church was named Rhema Chapel International Churches, Victoria Island. The pioneering minister of Rhema Chapel International Churches, Victoria Island, was the late Apostle John Okwak. He pioneered the work alongside his wife, Pastor Mrs. Ngozi Okwak, Minister Tony Bello, the assistant minister in charge, Minister Charles Odiase, the chapel administrator, and Minister Ayo Olomu, now known as Minister Ayo Daniels. Minister Daniels' stay was brief, and he was later replaced by Minister Kola Fabii. Pastor John Okwak was deeply passionate about raising young professionals, men and women in the corporate world and in other spheres of life, who would use their talents, gifting, and resources to serve God. The church meetings were held at the Etiosa Local Government Magistrate Hall on Muri Okunola Street, Victoria Island, and the congregation grew to the extent that 2 services were required. Unfortunately, in 1997, while the good work was prospering, Minister John Okwak and his wife's time at Victoria Island was cut short when they were transferred to Rhema Chapel Yaba to serve as the minister in charge, following the departure of Minister Kizito Jagede. Pastor Okwak's heart's desire had been to relocate the church away from the magistrate hall due to the challenges of running effective services in that environment. Church members had to arrive very early on Sunday mornings to clean the hall and set it up before services could commence, as the local government janitors would not do so, and this did not align with his corporate vision for the church. He had been exploring the possibility of renting a space at Bella House, a building owned by Mike Adenuga situated close to the church, but this plan was cut short by his departure. The church office was located on Bishop Aboyede Cole Street, Victoria Island, where departmental meetings were held during the week or on Saturdays. Pastor Okwak set the pace for the work and raised the bar high. He was a good-natured gentleman, and with the support of his amiable wife, the church thrived under his leadership. He was greatly missed. Minister Bayo Agbaje, minister in charge, 1997 to 1999. After Pastor Okwak's departure, Minister Bayo Agbaje became the new minister in charge. He was young, unmarried, and full of energy to serve. His board of ministers, BOM, was made up of a few of the ministers who had served under Pastor John Okwak, with 2 new members added. Within the BOM, there were also new roles. Minister Charles Odiase stepped up as assistant minister in charge following the departure of Minister Tony Bello, and Minister Kola Fabii took on the role of chapel administrator. The first church administrative secretary was Sister Emily Olorinoye, and after her departure to Yaba, Brother Sola Salako Israel was appointed to the role. Minister Bayo Agbaje faced a difficult and challenging era. A number of the older members struggled to accept a young, unmarried man as minister in charge. He also did not serve for long, as he was transferred out in 1999. Worthy of note was an attempt during his tenure to acquire a property at Jakande as a permanent site, though this did not materialize. Significantly, a number of foreign nationals, Indians, Togolese, Ivorians, and others, joined the church during his time, and some remained for many years after his departure. He was a very friendly man and a music lover. He encouraged the church to hold praise services, and the first musical concert in the church's history was held during his tenure, a huge success, graced by Rhema Chapel installations from Ibadan and Lagos. He also continued to raise funds towards a permanent site, adding to what had already been accumulated. In today's parlance, he would have been described as a Gen Z minister. He departed in January 1999 during the ministry's annual fasting and prayer program in January. Pastor Mike Oowai, Minister in Charge, 1999 to 2000. In late 1998, Pastor Mike Oowai was appointed to take over from Minister Bayo Agbaje. He had been a minister at Rhema Chapel Yaba, but did not resume at Victoria Island until early 1999. It was Pastor Okwok who came to formally introduce him to the congregation. His reception was met with some resistance, though somewhat less than that experienced by Minister Agbaje. The departure of Pastor Okwok as minister in charge did not sit well with many members for a long time, and the 4 MICs who followed him had to work considerably harder to earn members' cooperation. Pastor Mike was married with children at the time, but his family lived in Ilorin and visited whenever they could. This arrangement also posed some challenges to his ministerial work. He was a man of prayer, and in time he won over the hearts of those who came to believe in his ministry. Under his leadership, the church grew in its prayer life, fasting regularly, holding all-night vigils on the last Friday of every month, and running deliverance programs that helped many people find freedom from spiritual bondage. He also championed monthly evangelism, which helped to grow what had been a dwindling membership. His motto was love, service, and worship. During his era, the church acquired a bus, and a dedicated building fund account was opened. His board of ministers included Minister Charles Odiase, Minister Kola Fabii, and Minister Dapo Banjo. He was transferred in the year 2000. Pastor Gabenga Aluko, Minister in Charge, 2000 to 2004. Pastor Gabenga Aluko took over the reins of affairs in the year 2000 as the Minister in Charge, the 4th MIC within the space of 9 years. His board of ministers consisted of Minister Charles Odiase, Minister Kola Fabii, Minister Ayo Olawepo, and Minister Dapo Banjo. Following the departure of Minister Kola Fabii, Minister Ayo Olawepo was appointed as the new chapel administrator. Minister Charles Odiase also left shortly after Minister Aluko's resumption, leaving the position of Assistant Minister in Charge temporarily vacant. Minister Jide Adeoti subsequently joined the BOM. Pastor Benga Aluko was also unmarried at the time, and the congregation's disposition towards him was somewhat more receptive compared to Minister Bayo Agbaje's reception. He was the first to use the slogan, "The people of the word, changing the world," which became a widely popular phrase among Rhemites in those days. He was truly a man of the word, teaching the scriptures with great passion. His midweek sermons could run quite long, yet members were often unaware of the time passing. Such was the quality and fervor of his teaching, reminiscent, many said, of listening to Reverend George himself. During his era, the church also acquired an official car in addition to the bus. Pastor Benga Aluko was a very hard-working man who did his utmost to also relocate the church, though this too did not materialize during his time. Like his predecessors, he continued to raise funds towards the purchase of a new property. In the year 2004, his service at Rhema Chapel, Victoria Island, came to an end as he was transferred to Port Harcourt, and a new minister took over. Minister Gregory Odiase, Minister in Charge, 2004 to 2010. Minister Gregory Odiase became the minister in charge in the year 2004 after the deployment of Pastor Benga Aluko. He served ever so passionately with his wife, Wuraola Odiase. Minister Abiola Ajadi was the assistant minister in charge, while the chapel administrator was Minister Ayo Olawepo. Other members of the Board of Minister were Minister Dapo Banjo and Minister Jide Adeoti. Minister Dapo Banjo was transferred to Rhema Ketu shortly after Minister Greg Odiase resumed office. During his tenure, the church membership grew appreciably. He and his wife were loved and accepted by the church members, and they cooperated with them. He set up a building committee headed by Deacon Seyi Oguntola, who was also instrumental in the purchase of the permanent site property. The decision to buy the property in the Chevron neighborhood was met with some resistance initially because of its distance to Victoria Island and the fact that it was located in a waterlogged area. One of the advantages the location had, however, was that it was designated by the government on its layout for a place of worship. With the support and approval of Reverend George, The property, measuring a little less than 2 plots, were purchased for the sum of 3,100,000 naira. Today, we know it was a decision guided by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit. After Deacon Seyi Oguntola left for the United Kingdom, Brother Bodunde Dahunsi became the chairman of the building committee. Shortly after it was purchased, a fundraising event was organized at Chevron Event Center in Bagada, Lagos, with Bishop Yomi Alarun Saye and other ministers in the ministry in attendance. So many people made pledges and redeemed them. Worthy of note is the late Mama Folashade Abaroje, who was a businesswoman and a devout church member who single-handedly gave the sum of 2 million naira in 2 installments towards the construction. It was a huge sum of money at the time. The gesture was a great encouragement to the Board of Ministers and the church at large, and plans began to come together gradually to relocate the church. In 2005, Minister Dapo Banjo left for Rhema K2. In 2006, Minister Greg Odiase relocated briefly with his family to France as a result of his wife's official assignment. And Minister Abiola Ajadi, who was his AMIC, became the interim MIC pending his return, a role he assumed in May 2007. Minister Abiola Ajadi, 6th Minister in Charge, 2007 to 2009. Minister Abiola at this point was now the 6th MIC of the church. His board was made up of Minister Ayo Olawepo and Minister Jide Adioti. Minister Gabriel Ajayi and Minister Bolu Soname also joined the BOM. In August 2007, Minister Jide Adioti left to become the MIC of Rhema Festac. Minister Abiola was married, and this also helped his ministerial work. He is married to Mrs. Folake Ajadi. The building committee, headed by Elder John Suli, who was also the president of the Men's Fellowship, under Minister Ajadi's leadership, with the assistance of Elder Kofa Warola Olarunsola and Deacon Dahunsi, began the construction of the permanent site, but had to stop because information reaching the church had it that the government had intended to create an alternative route along the church premise. The road construction opened the neighborhood. The church and 2 other buildings, including the Redeemed Christian Church across the road, which was a school, were the only property in the neighborhood at the time, and everywhere was practically waterlogged. During his era, the sand filling of the site began. In 2009, he was transferred to Rhema Chapel Agege, shortly after the return of Minister Greg Odiase from France. He was a man who was passionate about prayers and evangelism. The church went out for evangelism on several occasions during his era, and souls were won and added to the church. Minister Greg Odiase returns 2009 to 2010. Minister Greg Odiase returned to Nigeria with his family in 2009 and resumed his assignment as the MIC of the church. In December 2009, Minister Olawepo was ordained a pastor and deployed to Ojodu as the MIC in 2010. Shortly afterwards, Minister Gabriel Ajayi also left the church. By 2010, when Minister Greg was rounding off his tenure to relocate to Canada, Minister Sunday Olaoye was deployed to his board, and his board consisted of Minister Bolu Soname, Minister Shegun Ogunusi, and the new minister, Sunday Olaoye. His ministry prospered through interpersonal relationships with members. He and his wife had listening ears, and they were ever so ready to assist church members. The children's church thrived in his era. Teachers were sent on training, and money was heavily invested in that arm of the church, despite the fact that the condition of worship was not the best. Children loved to come to church. At a time, the children's church had over 40 children who came to church steadily, and some eventually brought their parents to be a part of the church. In 2010, he relocated to Canada with his family and handed over the good work to Pastor Taiwo Joda. Pastor Taiwo Joda, Minister in Charge, 2010 to 2025. Pastor Taiwo Joda took over the management of the affairs of the church from Minister Greg Odiase in 2010, a job he did so well for about 14 and a half years, making him the longest minister in charge who served the church. He was married when he took up the role, and this made his work seamless. He was friendly, youthful, and vibrant. He is married to Mrs. Bola Joda. His board was made up of Minister Sunday Oloye, Minister Segun Ogunusi, and Minister Bolu Soname at the onset of his work. He it was that the mandate to relocate the church rested upon. He was persuaded that the money for the construction will come from the church members, and he led by a persuasive example. He and his wife sold off one of their cars, and they put the money in the building account. This singular gesture motivated other church members to give unconditionally. Barely 2 years after his resumption, the church was sent packing by the authorities of the Etiosa local government to give way to the construction of a modern facility. This was a particularly trying period. The church found a restaurant space to use for its place of worship at a Jose Adeogun, Mama Cass restaurant. Church equipment were moved from place to place. The stress of fellowshipping in the new place was much, but the service spirit of the church members was stronger. Theirs was a never-say-die spirit.
The church grew in number, in love, and in giving. In 2011, Elder Suli went to be with the Lord, and Elder Kofo Warola Olorinsola became the new building committee chairman. Over the years, many ministers and members would come to be known as part of the team that relocated the church to its permanent site. Notable among them are Deacon Bodunde Dahunsi, Brother Tony Suli, Minister Segun Ogunusi, and the late Minister Ayo Kujore Onifade. They worked assiduously for the materialization of this vision. In September 2013, the small auditorium was completed, and the church moved to its permanent site. It was a major victory in the life of the church. Reverend George Adegboye honored the effort of Pastor Joda and the church at large, and he came in person for the dedication. The name also officially changed from Rhema Chapel Victoria Island to Rhema Chapel Lekki. Over the next 7 years, the construction of the main auditorium continued non-stop. On July 16, 2022, the main auditorium was officially commissioned and dedicated by the DPC, Pastor Tunde Mabinori, on behalf of Reverend George Adegboye. Pastor Taiwo Joda's era was filled with fun activities that bonded the church. Worthy of note was the first church day out to Badagry while still at Etiosa local government premises. Children had so much fun at the excursion. This trip was largely sponsored by the late Elder John Suli. His beautiful memory will linger on in the hearts of those who knew him. The church had other church day activities when it moved to its permanent site as well. It also conducted many outreach programs. In Easter, it conducted medical outreaches, whilst in December, it was the Feast with the King, where raw food items are bagged for the needing within her environs. It was also accompanied with jumble sales. Money realized from the sales of these items were used to take care of children in motherless babies' home. During the COVID period, the church members were provided for, and the midweek services held online. To mark the victory God wrought for the church in bringing her to her permanent site, an annual all-night praise service was instituted about 2 years after the church commenced operations in the permanent site. This event has held every year to the glory of God till date. As the work progressed over the years, additional ministers joined Pastor Joda's workforce from 2012. The late Minister Ayodeji Kujore Onifade, Minister Abosede Adebayo, whose stay was brief, 8 months, Minister Mrs. Titilayo Ajose, Minister Stephen Ayedun, and Minister Sheun Adewusi. In 2016, Minister Ogunusi requested to be transferred to Rhema Ikorodu because he relocated to Ikorodu, and this was granted by the ministry. Minister Bolu Soname also left for Rhema Ketu in 2020. In 2024, Pastor Taiwo Joda requested to be released because he believed God had a bigger assignment for him, and in March 2025, he was officially released. He was hardworking and passionate about seeing members gainfully employed and growing in every aspect of life. His ministry touched many lives, especially young people. The church gives thanks to God for the gift of him and his family. He will be greatly missed. He currently worships at Rhema Ikeja. He handed over the touch to Minister Supo Olageshin in March 2025. Minister Supo Olegeshin, current minister in charge, 2025 to present. Minister Supo Olegeshin is the current minister in charge of Rhema Chapel, Lekki. He was transferred from Rhema Yaba. He is married to Mrs. Modupeola Olegeshin, and together with the current serving board of ministers, they have taken the work of the ministry to a whole new level. In Memoriam. The story is incomplete without mentioning our heroes past who have gone to join the great company of the saints. During the course of their lives, they served the Lord the best they could. Elder John Suli went home on 10th May 2012. Mama Folashade Patience Abaroje. Home call, 27th of November 2012. Deacon Olayinka Arinola Akinsanya. Passed on to glory on August 29th, 2016. Balana Eve Kolonsoga went to be with the Lord on January 10th, 2018. Minister Ayodeji Kujore Onifade slept in the Lord on November 6th, 2020. Mrs. Gladys Omotola Kumolu went to be with the Lord on January 24th, 2021. Apostle John Paul Okwak went to be with the Lord on May 3rd, 2021. Mama Omotomilola Adenike Omoniyi went to be with the Lord on March 24th, 2025. Mrs. Grace Enaku Ejukwa, home call, December 23rd, 2025. Closing. Rhema Chapel Lekki from the days of Etiosa also had many joyous occasions of weddings, naming ceremonies, and housewarming to mention a few. As the church marches on to its next phase of life, filled with glory and impact, we trust that the Lord will hold her by the hand and shine His light on her path. Cheers to 30 years and beyond. To God be the glory. Happy 30th birthday, Rhema Chapel International Churches, Lekki.